say patients, not inmates, are coming from the county level correction system. It is more outside of the realm of our typical service to receive somebody from the state correctional facilities. Once they've been sentenced, generally they go to the state correctional facilities. Our patients are from the county level, generally. Our goal is to provide treatment and restoration as a service to the courts. So comparing a little bit between the forensic and civil hospitals, within the Department of Public Welfare, all of the patients that we have at the state hospitals have some type of commitment under the Mental Health Procedures Act. For the forensic side of the hospital, though, there may be criminal charges pending. That's not the only qualifier. We've got people in our civil hospitals that also may have criminal charges pending. Sometimes people have already been sentenced and are serving their time in a county facility, but may be in need of treatment, and the jail personnel are asking us for some assistance in helping that person regain stability so that they can continue to serve their sentence and return. Within the forensic centers, we do not have psychiatric aides or aid trainees. We have forensic security employees, forensic security employee trainees. Of note, too, of particular interest from my perspective is that the civil hospitals also serve an increasing number of people that have maxed out of state correctional facilities in very lengthy sentences. So some of the background on the FSE and aid hiring when comparing the two. The FSE trainees and aid trainee positions are hired from the same civil service list, basically meaning they take the same test to be hired for either of those positions. Aides don't become psychiatric aides until they've successfully completed and proven competency after 6 months of training. Our FSE trainees must have successfully completed 1 full year of training to be given FSE 1. The curriculum for the FSE trainees is developed and determined by a joint apprenticeship committee that is comprised of members of the FSEs and the H-1 bargaining unit and the CEOs and the management folks at the forensic centers. It's a collaborative effort, and we look at the best practices within the state mental hospitals, benchmarks against some of the practices within the corrections facilities, national standards and improvements such as the intercept model, making sure that our staff are aware of some of the very best things that need to be going on to return people to a quality of life. The FSE and aid training, some of the basic things that they may learn in either training are psychiatric terminology, psychiatric theory and historical perspective, identification and differentiation of mental disorders and some of their symptoms, and specific treatment modalities for different conditions or disorders, all of which may be occurring at the same time on any of the given units. The FSE and psychiatric aid job descriptions, well, both job duties include providing physical nursing care or basic care to patients. They assist patients to achieve individual treatment goals that are determined as part of a comprehensive individualized treatment plan with a treatment team. Our FSEs and the psych aides document patient behavior and their progress on their goals. They act as patient advocates. They utilize crisis prevention and intervention techniques through a structured curriculum. They monitor the environment for safety and security, and that is not the last bullet on the list because it is the least significant. It is certainly a very significant part of their job. FSCs provide significant patient care. For example, they assist patients with activities of daily living, showering, personal hygiene, nutrition. They escort patients within the building and outside of the facility when absolutely necessary. They apply therapeutic techniques and individual interactions in group settings. They observe patients in various settings. They participate in multidisciplinary treatment teams to identify patient-centered goals and also assisting patients in achieving those goals. And they promote continuity by sharing that information between their coworkers and between the team members. I apologize to all the corrections officers within the room. I see that the title of this page has COs. The O there should be capitalized. There are several differences, though, between FSEs and COs. They are hired from the same applicant pools as psych aides or FSEs are. They must complete and pass the aide trainee training at the hospital where they're employed, which would either be Norristown or Torrance. They don't attend CO training. They're responsible for direct patient care, and they work different schedules than COs. Our FSCs are guaranteed 30 minutes of unpaid non-working meal breaks. They do not receive free meals on premises. And because of the unpaid meal break, their shifts are 8.5 hours, which allows for some of the necessary handoff communication between the shifts that we're required to provide under the Joint Commission and Medicare. Some of the other things, forensic units are never over capacity due to accreditation and certification requirements. I think we are very much struck within the Department of Public Welfare when we hear the overcapacity percentages and some of the things that are discussed within the Department of Corrections. With our accreditation and our certification, we absolutely cannot exceed our bed capacity, or we are in jeopardy of losing that accreditation status. Our FSCs work in much smaller facilities with much smaller complements. Norristown currently has 159 FSCs, Torrance 125. So about 285 FSCs total in the state within the 2 state mental hospitals that have forensic centers. We do have the capacity to provide one-to-one observation with our patients when the acuity level of the patient provides such a risk that a doctor has deemed it necessary due to safety or security, or because of reasons that the patient may be self-injurious or other symptoms that are part of the mental illness that may be impairing their ability to function without that supervision. So when we compare FSCs and corrections officers, our FSCs are employed by the Department of Public Welfare. Corrections officers are employed by the Department of Corrections. The FSCs work at the regional forensic psychiatric centers on the grounds of one of the 2 state mental hospitals that were mentioned. They are hospital environments. They're considered healthcare facilities. They're hospitals, not prisons. Our patients have dormitory-style rooms, not cells. Patients, not prisoners. Our goal is treatment and recovery, restoration of competency. We want our patients to be actively participating in their care and treatment and participating in their treatment teams. Their line of authority for the FSCs is through the nursing detail, not through the hospital security detail. The regional forensic psychiatric centers must comply with the requirements of the Mental Health Procedures Act. It's not negotiable. The Joint Commission, as we heard, the ACA sets the standards for the DOC. The Joint Commission sets the standard for the state psychiatric centers and the state mental hospitals. All of our policies and procedures use those as a baseline that we must be in compliance with. The Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, CMS, Medicare, also has a significant set of standards with which we must be in compliance. I am very happy to share with you that in November of 2008, when we relocated the forensic facility from Mayview to Torrance, we had the first visit from Medicare to Torrance State Hospital in 10 years. They happened to show up, and our forensic center was accredited for the very first time. We achieved Medicare accreditation within 2 months after moving in that facility. It's an incredible accomplishment for our staff and our people that we serve. So while we do have accreditation standards that we're held to, it's not quite the same context that you might think of when you're looking at the differences between the Department of Public Welfare and the Department of Corrections. I'm going to turn it over to Patty Kaufman.
Okay, I'm going to speak a little regarding Act 102. This act is through the Pennsylvania Department of Labor and Industry, and it is related to the prohibition of excessive overtime in healthcare. It became effective July 1st, 2009, and state hospitals that are under the Department of Public Welfare, which includes the Forensic Center, are required to comply with this act. It's related directly, as states, to the prohibition of excessive overtime. Generally, when there is an overtime shift available, of course, volunteers are asked initially. If volunteers are not available, then at the last resort, mandation becomes necessary. Of course, mandation is the last resort. I do want to effectively state that. And there are several issues in the Act that you can read related to the mandatory overtime. According to the proposal by the Commonwealth, under hours of work in Article 6, the new section, we're proposing that employees covered by this Act, Act 102 of 2008, prohibition of excessive overtime in healthcare, will be subject to a 2-hour call-off requirement. This call-off requirement will allow additional time for the individuals that call out for overtime to obtain adequate coverage that may result. So it's a protection of actually the employees as well as the employer.
All right, any questions from the association?
I just have a couple questions. You had talked about the 1-to-1 ratio between the forensic security employee and the patient for acute circumstances. And my question to you is this something that happens on a daily occurrence, a weekly occurrence? How often is that 1-to-1 ratio in existence?
I will say that there's probably not a day that goes by that we don't have at least one person within the facility that's on a 1-to-1 continuous visual observation. A doctor has to see that patient. However, it's not required for every patient. We also have a requirement that a team review that order within 24 hours, every 24 hours, to make sure that there's not a lesser restrictive environment or method to approach the handling of that individual.
Okay, so on a daily basis, you may have one, maybe two, maybe even more patients that are requiring this acute care. The other forensic security employees that are then at the facility, their responsibility is to watch the other patients or to provide the services to the other patients in general?
As part of their